I still remember that morning like it's tattooed in my mind. The sunlight was pouring through the kitchen window, soft and golden, like it didn't know my whole world was about to collapse. I was making coffee, humming to myself, when Ethan walked in. He didn't look like himself. His hair was messy, his eyes distant. His jaw tight, like he'd been arguing with his own thoughts all night. "Elena," he said. His voice flat. "We need to talk," those 4 words. Every woman knows that tone. My stomach dropped before he even said another thing. I tried to play it cool. I mean, what else could I do? "Talk about what?" I asked, forcing a little laugh. He looked at me for a second, really looked at me, then sighed. Like the weight of it all was too much. "I can't do this anymore," he said quietly. "The world just stopped." "What do you mean you can't do this?" I whispered, my throat tight. "I mean us, Elena. I'm done pretending. I'm leaving." I laughed. I actually laughed. It wasn't real laughter. It was the kind that slips out when your brain refuses to process pain. "You're joking, right? After everything? You're just walking out?" He didn't answer. He just looked down, slid his car keys into his pocket, and walked toward the door. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I wanted to scream, to throw something to make him stay. But I didn't. I just stood there, frozen. As the man I thought was my forever walked out without even turning back, and then, right before he closed the door, he said softly, "There's something on the table for you." When the door shut, the silence was deafening. I turned around and saw it, a folded piece of paper on the dining table. Just sitting there like it had been waiting for me. I didn't open it right away. My hands were shaking too much. Instead, I sank into the chair, staring at it. Like somehow that note held every answer I'd ever wanted and every heartbreak I didn't. Hours passed. Maybe minutes. Time didn't make sense anymore. Eventually, I picked it up. The handwriting was his. Sharp, neat, too familiar, but before I even unfolded it, I laughed again, that same hollow, bitter laugh. I thought, what could he possibly write that would matter now? If only I'd known, that note would destroy the last good part of me and rebuild something darker. Something I didn't even know lived inside me. Because that note wasn't just a goodbye. It was a confession. I don't know why my hands were trembling so bad when I opened it. It was just paper, words stink, but when your whole heart is bleeding, even ink feels like it can kill you. The first line hit like a punch. "Elena, I don't love you anymore." I have it for a long time. For a second, I couldn't even breathe. The room felt smaller, like the air had been sucked out. I reread that line at least 5 times, hoping the letters would rearrange themselves. That maybe I was hallucinating. But no, he meant it. "You're too safe, too predictable. I need more out of life, more excitement, more passion. You stopped being that years ago." My eyes burned. I could barely see the page. I kept reading, even though every sentence felt like a knife twisting deeper. "You gave me stability, but not fire. You were my comfort zone, not my dream. I found someone who makes me feel alive again." My body went cold. I stared at those words. I found someone. It wasn't just that he left me. It's that he'd been with someone else. The letter went on, talking about how he didn't mean to hurt me, how he wished me the best, and how someday I'd understand. Understand what? That I wasn't enough? That he traded loyalty for lust and wanted forgiveness wrapped up in poetic excuses? By the time I finished, I couldn't cry anymore. My tears had turned into something heavier, something I hadn't felt in years. Anger. It started as a slow burn in my chest, then spread like wildfire. Every word of that note replayed in my mind. Too safe, too predictable, not exciting enough. He wanted excitement? Passion? Fire? Fine, he was going to see fire, but not the kind he imagined. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat on the couch, staring at that stupid letter, feeling every emotion twist through me. Love, hate, confusion, rage. I thought about all the nights I stayed up waiting for him to come home. The dinners I cooked. The times I forgave him for being busy. The way I defended him when my friends told me he didn't deserve me. And all the while, he was probably texting her. At some point, I started laughing again. A sharp, broken laugh that didn't sound human. I realized how ridiculous it all was, how blind I'd been, but beneath that laughter, something inside me shifted. I didn't want him back. I didn't want his apology. I wanted him to see what he'd done, to feel it. To realize he'd destroyed something that would never love him the same way again. Not through revenge that hurts him physically, no. I wasn't going to stoop to that. This was going to be emotional revenge, quiet, intelligent, beautifully devastating, because when I was done, Ethan would wish he'd never written that note. 3 weeks. That's how long it took for the pain to stop feeling like pain and start feeling like purpose. I hadn't spoken to Ethan since the day he walked out. Not a text, not a call. Not even a drunk message at midnight, and trust me, I had plenty of nights when the temptation was right there sitting on my chest, but I didn't cave. Because I'd made a promise to myself, I wasn't going to chase him. I was going to replace him, not with someone else, but with a better version of me. The note became my mirror. Every cruel sentence he wrote was a reflection of how small he wanted me to feel. Too safe, too predictable, not passionate enough. I read those words every morning. Not to cry, but to remind myself of who I would never be again. I cut my hair first. Just an inch or two at the salon. But when I looked in the mirror, something in me smiled for the first time in weeks. The stylist, a woman named Claire, said softly, "Heartbreak haircut?" I nodded. She just smiled. Good, let him see what he lost. Funny thing? She didn't even know she'd just spoken my mission out loud. I started running again. Went back to yoga. Bought clothes that actually made me feel like I was alive. Not like I was just existing in someone else's comfort zone. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. But the thought of him seeing this new version of me, that was part of the satisfaction too. And fate must have loved my little plan, because one afternoon, it handed me something I never expected. I was walking into the local coffee shop when I saw her. The someone from the note. She was sitting there in a corner booth, all polished and perfect. The kind of woman you could tell spent an hour just to look effortless, blonde, elegant. Expensive perfume that probably cost more than my rent, and sitting across from her was Ethan. For a second, I froze. My stomach dropped, but my face didn't flinch. Instead, I smiled, the kind of calm, graceful smile that hides an earthquake. He saw me first. His expression flickered, surprise, guilt, maybe even a trace of regret. I walked right past their table, pretending not to notice, and ordered my usual latte. But the universe wasn't done playing with me. When I turned around, the barista called out my name, loudly, "Elena. Your lot's ready." Every head turned, including his. I took my cup, walked past him again, and finally let my eyes meet his. "Hey, Ethan," I said softly, my voice steady. "You look happy," he stammered. "Elena, hey, I didn't expect." "It's okay," I cut him off with a polite smile. "You don't owe me anything." Then I glanced at her. "You must be Chloe." The woman blinked, clearly caught off guard. Yeah, I've heard so much about you," I said with a small laugh, setting my latte down for a moment. Ethan always wanted someone who made him feel alive. I'm glad he found that. Her face shifted, confused between pride and discomfort. Ethan looked like he wanted to disappear. I leaned in slightly, lowered my voice, and said, "Just make sure you don't let him write you any notes. He has a way with words, but not with truth." Then I smiled, that calm, graceful, terrifying smile, and walked out. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. But I didn't look back, because that wasn't weakness anymore. That was power. And that was only the beginning. It's strange how silence can hurt more than words. After that coffee shop moment, I didn't block Ethan. I didn't post cryptic quotes or breakup rants. I didn't even delete our pictures. I just vanished. No messages. No calls, no reactions. And that somehow hurt him more than any explosion ever could. I started showing up in places I'd avoided before: dinner with friends, networking events, charity nights. I laughed again, louder than I used to. I wore colors I'd forgotten I loved. And every time someone complimented me, I felt a piece of myself returning, sharper, brighter, freer. I wasn't pretending anymore. I was healing. But that healing, ironically, looked a lot like revenge, because every move I made, every smile, every little sign of happiness, it found its way to him. Small town, mutual friends, social media whispers. He saw it all. One night, I got a message. "Ethan, you look amazing lately. I'm glad you're doing okay." I stared at it for a full minute. He didn't deserve an answer. But silence felt too kind. So I replied, "Elena, I am doing okay. Actually, I'm doing great. Thank you for leaving." Just that. No punctuation, no anger. Just truth. He didn't respond. But he didn't have to. I knew it landed. A few days later, fate decided to stir the pot again. I was at a small charity gala. My company had sponsored part of it. I was helping with guest coordination when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Elena?" That voice used to make my heart skip. Now, it just made me straighten my posture. I turned around. Ethan stood there, wearing the same charming smile that once fooled me into believing him forever. But behind that smile was something else: regret. "Hey," I said politely. He rubbed the back of his neck. "You look incredible. Seriously, I barely recognized you." "Thank you," I said calmly. "Guess I finally became the woman you thought I couldn't be." His smile faltered. "That's not fair." "Oh, it's not about fair, Ethan," I said softly, my voice steady. "It's about truth. You said I wasn't exciting enough, remember? Well, turns out I just wasn't exciting for you." He opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. I took a small step closer, not in anger, but in calm control. "You wanted a fire," I whispered. "But you forgot fires burn down everything, including the ones who start them." His eyes dropped. I smiled faintly, placed my champagne glass on a nearby table, and walked away before he could reply. As I walked off, I heard one of my coworkers whisper to another, "Who was that guy?" Someone else answered, "Her ex, I think." Then came the whisper that made me grin. Damn, she handled that like a queen. That night, lying in bed, I finally read the note again, not to cry, not to ache, but to close the chapter. Every cruel word was still there, but this time they didn't sting. Instead, they sounded like echoes from a different life, one where I didn't know my worth. I folded the note neatly, lit a small candle on my windowsill, and let the flame kiss the paper until it turned to ash. Watching it burn wasn't anger. It was release. For the first time in a long time, I felt free, truly free, but deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Because karma in her elegant timing wasn't done yet. I always thought karma would look like revenge, like fire or rage, or some dramatic scene straight out of a movie. But it didn't. It came dressed in quiet moments, in whispers, in timing so perfect, it almost felt divine. It started a month after that gala. One morning, while scrolling through my phone at a cafe, I saw a post, Chloe's post. A perfectly edited selfie with a caption that said, "Sometimes love isn't what you thought it was." No tag. No Ethan, just that line. I didn't mean to smile, but I did, because I knew that tone. That was the voice of someone realizing their fairy tale had cracks. Still, I didn't let myself gloat. I just sipped my coffee and went back to my emails. But by that evening, the whispers had begun. A mutual friend messaged me, "Hey, did you hear about Ethan and Chloe? Apparently, they're not doing great." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Some stories unfold better when you just watch. Days later, I ran into Ethan at the grocery store. He looked different, tired, like life had finally stopped pampering him. His shoulders weren't as straight, and his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Elena," he said, trying to sound casual. "Ethan," I answered, nodding. There was an awkward pause before he spoke again. "You look really happy." "I am," I said simply. "Happiness is quiet when it's real." He looked down, then said, "I miss that about you. The way you always found peace in things." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the too predictable version of me?" He sighed, guilt flickering across his face. "I was stupid. I thought I wanted something else, but..." He trailed off. I didn't finish his sentence for him. I just smiled, the kind of smile that didn't need words to make its point. Then came the twist of fate I didn't plan. But somehow, it made everything come full circle. A few weeks later, Ethan reached out again. This time, he wanted to meet. He said he had something to give me, closure, he called it. Part of me wanted to ignore him, but another part, the stronger, calmer part, wanted to hear it. We met at a small park we used to go to in the fall. The trees were painted gold and red, and the air carried that soft chill that made everything feel like a memory. He showed up holding an envelope. For a second, my chest tightened. Another note. He handed it to me and said quietly, "I wrote this because I finally get it now." I didn't open it right away. I just looked at him. He looked older, smaller somehow. Regret does that to people. It shrinks them. "I don't need another note," I said. "I already learned what I needed to from the first one." "I know," he whispered. "But I need you to read this anyway." I hesitated, then unfolded it. "Elena, you were never too safe. You were never predictable. You were peace, and I mistook that for boredom. I left looking for fire and found only smoke. I'm sorry I broke something that pure. I thought passion meant chaos. I was wrong." I read it once, twice, then looked up at him. He was waiting for forgiveness, for softness, for something, but that version of me, the one who needed to save him, didn't exist anymore. I smiled gently and said, "Ethan, I hope you find peace too. But not mine." I handed the note back and stood up. He called after me, "Elena, wait." I turned, my hair catching the wind. "Goodbye, Ethan," I said softly. "For real this time." And then I walked away, not dramatically, not angrily. Just done. As I reached my car, I realized something. That first note destroyed me. But this one? It proved I'd already won, because the best revenge isn't making them hurt. It's showing them they can't hurt you anymore. It's funny how the end of something can feel less like a finish line and more like a sunrise. When I walked away from Ethan that day, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cold or bitter either. I just felt light. For months, I had carried the weight of that first note, every word, every insult, every wound. I thought I needed revenge to heal. But the truth? I just needed distance. Distance gives perspective. Perspective gives peace. I didn't burn for him anymore. I didn't even hate him. He simply didn't matter. Life moved on quietly in the most beautiful ways. I started painting again, something I hadn't done in years. I moved into a small apartment downtown, sunlight everywhere, plants on every windowsill, laughter echoing in every room. My friends noticed the difference. "You're glowing again," they'd say. And maybe I was, not because someone loved me, but because I finally did. One Sunday morning, I went for a walk through the park, the same one where Ethan had given me his second note. The trees were blooming, the air soft and alive with spring. And as I sat on the bench, I realized something. I didn't replay the breakup in my mind anymore. I didn't crave closure. Because closure isn't something they give you, it's something you decide for yourself. I pulled out my phone, opened my notes app and started typing something. Not for Ethan, not for anyone else, for me. You were not too safe. You were stability in a world of chaos. You were love that didn't have to shout to be real. And the next person who gets that version of you, they'll know it's worth. I smiled, locked my phone, and leaned back, watching the sunlight break through the trees. A few minutes later, I heard laughter, that soft, careless kind that comes from people who haven't been broken yet. A couple walked by holding hands, and I felt a quiet warmth in my chest, not jealousy, not pain, just hope, because love wasn't my enemy anymore. Ethan wasn't my story's villain, he was just the wrong chapter, and as for revenge, it wasn't about making him pay. It was about making sure that when he thought of me, years from now, maybe when life got quiet, he'd remember that I didn't beg. I didn't chase. I rebuilt. He'll never forget the girl who laughed when he left and became everything he thought she couldn't be, and maybe one day, he'll sit alone, reading old messages or scrolling through old photos, realizing that peace, the kind I have now, was the one thing he never found. I stood up, brushed off my jeans and walked home. Not to start over, but to keep going, because the story wasn't about Ethan anymore. It was about Elena and the beautiful, unstoppable woman she became after the note.